Benny Johnson here, and welcome to another iOS development tutorial. In today's episode, we're going to start our bank application I mentioned in the last tutorial. So, as always, go ahead and launch Xcode, and I'm going to create a new project for our application. It's going to be a single view application, and I'm going to call it iBank. I know it's a great original name. You can call it whatever you want. Maybe your name bank or whatever you want to do. With the company identifier, you can set this to anything, it doesn't really matter. We won't be releasing this application on the App Store. So I'm just going to put call binary. It could be just .com, your name, or whatever you want to be. In the class prefix, I've decided to add this iBank prefix, but you do not have to do this. Basically, this just adds that little iBank extension to every class file we create for our project. So if you want to do that, you can, but if you don't have to. It's just optional. So it's going to be an iPhone application. It's not going to be universal or iPad. It's just going to be iPhone because I want to keep it simple. We're going to use storyboards, and we're going to use automatic reference counting, and we're not going to include unit testing. So keep that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and just create it in my document. You can save it wherever you like. And as always, this is our Xcode interface, and in our project files, I'm just going to select our main storyboard.storyboard. And this will bring up our storyboard. Now, storyboards is a new feature that was introduced in Xcode 4. It's really powerful and really easy to use, but basically what it does is it allows you to view and create all your UI states for your application through the application lifestyle. So you can actually create all of your views, connect them up together, and they will all work, and you do not need to add any code. So it's really great. Beforehand, you actually had to create each one of these interfaces that you have here. So this is just the view controller. So you had to create each view controller and hook them up through code. But with storyboards, you can actually view all your view controllers in at one time and connect them up just through the user interface. So it's really easy, really powerful, and we're going to be using it for this project. So to start off with, I do not want this view controller, so I'm just going to hit the delete key to remove that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my inspector, and I'm going to select the objects tab there, and I'm going to select this tab bar controller. So I'm going to click that, drag it across, and as you can see, it's added 3 controllers here. We've got the tab bar view controller, and what this does is it just basically defines a tab bar, and any view controller that is actually connected to this tab bar controller actually gets this tab down the bottom, and as you can see, we've got item 1 and item 2. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm just going to go to my attributes inspector, and I'm just going to change the color of this just to demonstrate how it's actually working and how easy it is to use storyboards. So I'm going to go ahead and run that now. And as you can see, we've got item 1, which we just changed the background to a reddish color, and we've got item 2, which is just basically plain white. And as I mentioned, any controller that actually inherits from this tab controller gets the tabbed, and it gets its own item. Now Storyboard does this automatically, so it's really great, and you can do it through buttons, you can do it through tab view controllers, so it's really easy to use. I love it. It's a great new addition to Xcode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill this simulator, and I'm just going to bring back the white background. So we've got our controllers, and this is how I decided to lay out this application. Now I could have used segment controls, but I didn't really want to do that because it just doesn't give you the ability to just work on each view. So I've decided to go with tab bar controllers because I think it was the most appropriate for this actual application. So this is going to be our loan section of our application, as I mentioned in the last tutorial, and this is going to be our actual investment section. So what I'm going to do is, before we go anywhere else, if you go over to your identity inspector, which is this little icon here, you can see that it is applied to the UI view controller class. Now, every time you add a view controller, that is default. It is actually applied to that generic UI view controller. And why is this bad for us? Well, this is bad for us because we do not have any control over this view controller. Because it's using that class, we can't access or edit that class because it's generic and it's part of Apple's code that they have written, which we can't see. So what we have to do is actually create our own view controller class and select that class for this actual view. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to click File, New, File, and I'm going to select the Objective-C class, part of the Cocoa Touch. And under the class name, I'm going to call it Loan because it's going to be our Loan View class. And make sure you select subclass UI View Controller. Now, as I mentioned in the Identity Inspector, it actually said UI View Controller. Now, what's this doing is it's inheriting all the code that's already in that UI View Controller and putting it into our class. So we can use all the methods, the variables, and that sort of thing in our class. We don't have to see it, but we still have the same control as that class, but we can add some code to it. So that's why we're inheriting from that UI View Controller. And make sure you untick Target for iPad with XIB for user interface. So I'm going to click Next, and make sure you create it in your actual project folder, like I'm doing here. And as you can see, it's added two files, the header file and the implementation file with the .m extension. Now let's go and do that. Let's go do that process again for our investment view. So I'm going to create another Objective-C class, and I'm going to call this Investment View Controller. Simple, right? And if you can remember back to our MVC, this would be the actual controller. The storyboard, the views here, would be part of our view, and we haven't created the model yet, but we're going to get to that. So we've got our things now. Now what we have to do is actually hook up these classes to these views, and this is quite simple. So I'm going to select this view, and I'm going to drop down the Identity Inspector under the class, and I'm going to select our class that we just created, which is our iBank Loan View Controller. So that will link our class up to this view, and I'm going to go back down and do the same thing for our investment view and select the investment view controller. So that's about it for today's tutorial. That's all we're going to be doing. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Remember to subscribe.